Hey everybody, it's Shadowz here, and welcome to the second week of my PBE podcast. Normally I'll structure these podcasts kind of talking about different topics, league news. When Sims start, I'll be talking about the Sims, new announcements, a little stuff from the Voyagers if I have any perspective. Like a different angle maybe on league news from the Voyagers lens. But since this one, it's the off season. I talked about a lot of off season stuff last podcast, and I want to qualify for the double draft bonus because more money is always nice. I'll be talking pretty much exclusively about the draft and just going kind of pick by pick, talking about how I feel about the pick, the player, etc. I had something to say before, and now I can't remember, so I'll just start getting into the draft. Oh yeah, I was just going to say that I was going to do a big write-up pick by pick to make even more money, but I simply don't have the time, so I figured condensing it into a 1-hour podcast would be the maximum reward for effort. Okay, so starting with round one, we have Outer Banks Aviators picking first. And one thing that a lot of people that are new might not understand is basically by the time the draft is started, at least GMs have figured out usually the first round, maybe the first round and a half, because they all talk to each other, share information, and, kind of try to take down their stress levels a little bit by figuring out who they're going to get where and all of that. So a lot of the first round wasn't very surprising. First 5 picks, I knew what was going to happen for sure unless somebody shook something up. 6th pick I'll get to, wasn't very sure of what was going to happen, but again, it wasn't a big surprise what did happen. Okay, so starting with the first pick, the Aviators took Travis Ritchie, center fielder. I think this is a good pick for the Aviators. The user behind Travis Ritchie is Rockies Fan Forever, and he's been a really great guy. He's been in the Discord. He was on the Sloths, I believe, as a waiver pickup for S2, and just really great guy, and he is sure to be promising. His activity has been sustained over most of S2. I think the Aviators just need a solid activity base to kind of get their wheels turning again and get in motion. So I think that's a good pick. I personally think that the Aviators could have swung for the fences a little bit more on that pick. Travis Ritchie was consensus number 1 by GMs, but I personally think that there were some players who have earned at a faster rate and are still active. But I still think that's a really solid pick. And congratulations to Ritchie on joining the number 1 overall club. Okay, so number 2 was the Crabs via Death Valley, and they took Akamai Kalawaya. I hope I pronounced that right, and that's a beanie. This was really not a surprise because Crabs had made it known to GMs that TLK would be stepping down shortly as he's getting married. Congratulations to him. So Beanie is his replacement. So they needed him on the team. Needed to take him at the first second they could, because if they tried to pull something where people knew like Beanie was going to be the Crabs GM, so like Crabs figured he could drop or anything, what probably would have happened is somebody would have taken Beanie and then basically taken advantage of the Crabs in a trade is what would have happened. And that's a good pick for the Crabs. I'm pretty sure. Here, let me pull up. I actually, for my own scouting, made like a kind of really rough team needs color coded thing so that I can just look at it. And yeah, they could use pitching. Their pitching is not bad, with Wozy and Koufax at the top two spots. Then you've got Ricky Vaughn, who's a really solid third option, and Bobby Outman, who was going to be there like a stud. He was the first overall pick last season, but he seems, I don't know if that's still the situation, but he seems to have ghosted on the Crabs. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens with that. So I think that's a good pick. And I mean, obviously, they needed the GM. So third was Vancouver picking Dear Oldest Borkman. There's a closer. The user is Bovo. That might be. I mean, the first two picks were really great ones, but to be honest, even Bovo dropping to third is really surprising. He has already accumulated, I think, close to 240 TPE. I'm not going to look right now because that would take too much time, but absolute stud. Is going to shore up any bullpen, and the fact that it's Vancouver's is even worse because their bullpen is just going to be absolutely deadly. So yeah, a lot of it, and one thing I saw is a lot of in the first round, like, if it almost felt like these picks really were locked in, because if a team wanted them and didn't take them there was no way in hell they were going to get them. Because, for example, Bovo's not picked third, he's getting picked fourth. If like, for example, at number 5, if who I'll get to, if Death Valley doesn't take DiStefano, then he's getting picked 6th. It was just a lot of stuff like that. So the fourth pick was the San Antonio Sloths with actually the New York Voyagers' first round pick, which was made in the trade in S2 for Keith Shields, Crutchfield. They picked Fast Guy Pitcherman, starting pitcher. T-Bone is the user behind that, and I think that's a really solid pick. T-Bone has gotten a lot of praise from people in the PBE who know him from NSFL. I know Osu talked to her GM on NSFL and said that T-Bone is really would be a really great addition. So I think that the writing's on the wall for T-Bone. He's going to make a great player, be really active, and that's a great pick for the Sloths because they're another team that, like the Aviators, the Sloths are not that bad of a team if you look at them. They have a lot of gaps, but the main thing is they just need to build an activity base to kind of entice more people to come and join their team. So I think that's a good pick by Juosu. So and one interesting thing I'll say is that in the first round, all picks except for Outer Banks, so 2 through 6, were traded. So for example, number 2, the Crabs was via Death Valley. Number 3, Vancouver was via San Antonio. Number 4 was via New York. 5 was via Providence, and 6 was via Vancouver. Okay, so pick number 5. That was just something interesting, I thought. Pick number 5 by Death Valley is Paulo DiStefano, right fielder. The user behind that player is, I hope I pronounced this right, Mejiasu. So Mejiasu has been, this is, I think, a fantastic pick. Mejiasu has been nothing short of hyperactive on the boards, in the Discord, and just doing really quality media. Day of the draft, put all the prospects into, did basically what Lone does in putting people's attributes into OOTP, and then he simmed a prospect game, which is fantastic. Made visuals of a complex 3-way trade that occurred in the draft. And yeah, it's just active and seems, and I have actually a funny anecdote about Mejiasu. I was just on the boards and I saw this new user, Mejiasu, with a blue name, and it said Updater Team, and I was like, and I looked at their page and they had created 2 days before, so I was like, that's weird. They're on the Updater Team, so I messaged Evok and I was like, was this an accident? Did you accidentally give perms to a new user? And of course that wasn't the case. Mejiasu is just stepped in and became an updater pretty much right away. So that's just an awesome pick for Death Valley. It's going to really re-energize their locker room, and a fantastic step. So Number 6 is Sloths via Vancouver. Sloths were trying to deal this pick for pretty much the entire few days leading up to the draft. I think, I can't speak for Osu, but I think the guys they wanted were in more of a mid-range, somewhere between round 2 and 3. So it felt like they would have, the people that they would be taking with the 6th pick anyway, they could get elsewhere. And I think I have to agree with that, because I know some of the people the Sloths were targeting, and I think that was solid logic, but at the end of the day, they couldn't get the value they wanted out of it. And they decided to take Joffrey Baratheon, catcher. The user is Christy, Osu's sister, so that's a pick that we all saw coming. I didn't know that was going to come at 6, and I actually think that, and as I just mentioned, I think Osu and Toivo, the GMs of the Sloths, didn't really know what to do with the pick. But I think if they didn't take Christy probably would have dropped, because it's like people have compared it to Voltron or to other stuff of that nature, where the O'Sullivans, other than Osu, are drastically weaker when not all united on the same team. So Christy made a new player, and I think a lot of people were probably hesitant that if Christy was on their team and not with her sister Osu, that they wouldn't get a fully active player. So but I still think that's a solid pick. I mean, Christy's going to be great for Osu. I just think they probably, and the Sloths didn't have a 2nd round pick, so I think they needed to take Christy, or a 3rd round pick, excuse me. So yeah, they needed to take Christy there. But in absolute terms, probably a bit of a reach. So moving on to round 2. Starting with the Outer Banks Aviators again. With the 7th overall pick, they took Virgil Fox, first baseman. This is a recreated player of, the user is Trifecta. Old player was Felipe Rios, who left around the time of the first archetype changes, which was, I think S1 off season, which had nerfed a couple builds, and Trifecta wasn't happy about that, so left. But now he's back. We've had our big archetype changes, so this is a good time for him to get back into the league. And I think he is, just from talking to him when I was doing my scouting for New York, I think he is here to stay, barring major archetype overhaul around 3. I think that's a really good pick for the Aviators. Another one of those cases where if he's not taken, we had the 8th pick, and I'll talk about that trade in a second, but that was another case where if the guy we wanted at 8 was taken instead of Virgil Fox, who was the likely second choice, Virgil Fox would have been taken by us, and it's just another one of those picks where if he drops out of 7, he's getting taken right away, because he's a really quality guy, and I think he'll be a fantastic user. And I should mention, as an aside, if any new kind of newbies are listening or to this podcast or anything like that, you'll notice that when I'm talking about the draft, I'm not talking about like their builds. I'm not really going into how they'll fit into the scheme other than like their baseline position. And that's because in sim leagues, if you haven't done them before, these player-based sim leagues, activity is the most important thing. You could be the most poorly built player, but if you're the most active person in the league, you're still going to outpace somebody who built a little better with their first 100 TPE. So that's just inside. So if you're wondering why I'm not talking about like, oh, really great contact hitter, going to contribute this to the team, fit into the lineup here between these people, it's because really what's important is activity and team fit when you get into these leagues. Anybody's build can be changed, but activity cannot. So that's also, if a lot of you are wondering, like, if you saw somebody's build who you didn't get or you didn't think would be that high, the reasoning is they're probably known to be active and really high hopes for their activity. So yeah, that was just a quick aside. Okay, so then moving to number 8, New York Voyagers via Providence. We traded for it. We gave away the 10th and the 17th pick. And the reasoning is we really wanted Ollie. Ollie Daniels is the player. I think his name in Discord is Ollie Opto, but I'm not sure if that's the same thing on the forums. But he's an outfielder, and basically he's been super active in the Discord. He's been on the boards, gave us really great responses to our scouting questions, and Yurt and I felt that we really wanted to get him. But with the 10, with sitting at number 10, we were really not sure that we would get him. It became clearer as the day went on that we probably didn't need to make that trade from our perspective, but then it's going to get a little complicated in the next couple seconds. So from our perspective, just talking to Providence and knowing who they would have taken at 8, and we knew who Death Valley was going to take at 9 later in the day, we didn't need to trade up to 8 to get Ollie necessarily, but little did we know that Vancouver, oh my god, it's going to get way too complicated, but basically we traded our 10th and 17th to Providence, who traded the 17th and something else for the 12th pick from Vancouver. Since Vancouver made that trade, they didn't have the ammo to make a trade for the 6th overall pick to the Sloths, where if they had that 6th overall pick, they would have taken Ollie, and therefore we wouldn't have gotten him. So sorry for that mouthful, but that's basically what happened. So we traded up to 8 to get Ollie. We were really happy with that pick. He's going to play, it might take a little bit before he replaces Kenny Jesus, probably less than or about a season. But he's going to be a franchise center fielder, I really feel. Great guy, high activity potential. It's been a pleasure to have in our Discord so far. And yeah, Jesus, our current center fielder, his activity has slowed down a little bit. I know he's got a lot going on with high school and everything with that, so we felt that this was a good replacement, and yeah, we're really excited to have Ollie, and we're happy that we made that trade. Okay, so round two, pick 3, which is number 9 overall, was Death Valley, and Death Valley chose Anna Justin, starting pitcher, who's Jiggly. From a positional standpoint, absolutely necessary. Death Valley is missing, I believe, they might have been using Tim Jackson as a starter, but with the new stamina caps on closers, that probably won't be very possible. So yeah, they need another starting pitcher, which they got. And Jiggly, unless he decides to retire Justin and, make a new player, which does happen sometimes with Jiggly, happened before at least, should be a very active addition to Death Valley. Jiggly was there as a waiver pickup and seemed to enjoy it, so I know Andy wanted him back. I will say that I think Death Valley could have gone somewhere else at 9. Don't get me wrong, Jiggly's a great addition, but I'm not sure that if Death Valley had taken somebody else, that Jiggly would be gone by their next pick, which was number 15. And we'll get to Death Valley later. It didn't really matter for them because they had a great number 15 anyway. But yeah, it's kind of the same situation as, or a little bit of a milder situation as first overall pick. Really solid pick. Probably could have swung for the fences on that one. But still, I think Jiggly's going to be happy in Death Valley and will be a great addition to their starting rotation. Okay, so now moving on to pick number 10 overall, which is Providence, the traded pick with New York Voyagers. They got a Pete Rose closer, whose user is Tindomul. Tindomul is another name for a user who was on on the NSFL. Knows the majority of the GMs in this league, and had some difficulties in NSFL, got involved in a little bit of a controversy, but still, I mean, he's my friend, and I'm really happy to see him go there. I know the Crabs wanted him, and they were afraid that if they didn't get him in the second round, he would be gone, which is probably valid, but they were right in thinking, at least I think they were right in thinking that 8 was probably a reach for him. And then you'll see why they made the Vandals trade in 2 picks later. But I'll say right now, in S1, maybe not, or S3, excuse me, these rookies' first season, they won't be so dominant because at full activity, they won't get more than to 240 TPE. But which is good, but for a whole season, that's not like elite level. But S4 Crabs are going to have one of the most legit bullpens in the entire league, which is really exciting to see because where it happened. It happened at the S3 draft. But yeah, we'll get on to that later. So number 11 overall was the Aviators via Death Valley, via Providence. I don't remember that trade, but there were, I think, leading into this draft, 6 or 7 trades involving picks, so it's too hard to keep up with. But really cool to see that people are moving their assets around and making everything a little more interesting, especially after, like S1, for example. Voyagers didn't make a trade until late S2. Like our first ever trade was getting Keith Shields, I'm pretty sure. And it was just because, or at least in S1, we won a championship. We were happy with our team. But now we're more in the making moves phase and trying to secure a really positive future for ourselves. But yeah, so Aviators decided to pick John Chang, starting pitcher. I believe the user is Tangboy NYC. Was a waiver pick playing for the Sloths. I know that Osu wanted him back, felt he was a reach at 6, which is fair. And that's one of the mid-range picks I was talking about, somewhere between second and third round probably going, and that's why they wanted to trade their 6th rounder for possibly second and third round picks so they could get the people they still wanted and not just waste basically the 6th round pick, which has more value than reaching on a player you could get later. But Aviators took Chang. If San Antonio was somewhere in here, they probably would have picked him up. But they didn't have a pick until the 4th round. And Chang is pretty active. I think he's really great in the locker room, from what Osu tells me. And Aviators could use, again, activity really important for them. And then also they had an opening they have pretty good starting pitching, but they need a 4th member of the rotation, and I think Tang Boy will fill that role, maybe move up to 3rd eventually, quite well. Oh, and actually they need more because Christy O'Sullivan is going to be is either allowed to play in S3 or not, because she retired and made Joffrey Baratheon. So I don't know when she retired, but the player's either going to be ineligible for S3 or eligible for S3 only. So that's an important pickup positionally. I'm getting a starting pitcher. So in moving to the last pick of the second round, we have Providence, who this is from Vancouver in the latter part of the three-way trade. Get Alvin Enox, a closer, shoring up their bullpen, as I mentioned. And the user is, I don't want to get the letters wrong, but I believe it's ATRDCI. And by the way, guys, if you're not impressed, I'm doing this all from their player names. So, yeah, that's called being a GM and having to know everybody in this league. But yeah, humble bragging. Yeah, I think ATR has shown a lot of activity. That was personally for the Voyager, somebody very high on our board, on our closer board. But we only had one pick in the second round and then wouldn't be able to pick until 16th. So we were pretty certain that we weren't going to get Enox. But that was a great pick by the Crabs. They're going to have a really dominant bullpen, and ATR seems to be the real deal. So best of luck to them, I think. And I'll do after the draft, I'll do team ratings, I guess, which are so subjective that the only thing that's going to happen is people are going to get offended or feel really good about themselves. So yeah. But I'll do that because I think they're kind of fun. And then, okay, so we move into round 3. Things of note in round 3. Sloths, again, don't have a pick in this round, as they didn't in round 2. Vandals have 3 picks in this round. And that's pretty much all that there is interesting to mention. Crabs don't have a pick in this round because they traded New York's third, but Crabs did the damage they needed to do in the second round. Okay, so round 3 starts again with the Aviators. 13th overall pick. They take Eric Bolitnikov, catcher. The user is, I'm going to get this name wrong, or no, I'm not. I remember. Fruit Bat Attack, which is a great username, by the way. Props to you, Fruit Bat Attack. And this one's actually an interesting story. Fruit Bat created literally, I want to say 30 minutes before the draft. There was a cutoff at like 7 p.m. And everybody was all literally on his creative player thread. There were, I think, 9 replies, all from GMs, just saying like, "HO, get this guy approved. Can we talk to this guy?" Like, and just getting hype, being like, "Oh, beat the buzzer! Like, go, 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 go! You got this!" Because we all just wanted him to be approved and be able to get in the draft. So that was actually really cool to see. We were joking, saying he probably thought we were batshit insane, absolutely crazy, come into a league and just, yeah, be very obsessive. But we just wanted you to have the best experience possible. Fruit Bat, if you're listening. Getting drafted is way more fun than having to play waivers for a whole season and then getting drafted. In my opinion, at least. I don't know. Maybe some people prefer waivers, but I highly doubt it. So yeah, I think that's a great pick. Fruit Bat has been really active in the Discord, seems like, and he's only been here for like 12 hours, but been super active, which is really cool to see. I personally will see who I would have went with 13 in a couple picks, but I think Fruit Bat seems like a really great guy, and I think could be one of the giant steals of the draft. Okay, so moving on to 14, we have Vancouver via San Antonio picking Boomerang Goblin, shortstop. And I think this is a really good pick. Boomerang Goblin has been in and around the forums, Discord, everything. Seems to be like he'll develop some great activity. I think the reason he dropped to 14 is probably just shortstop is not in very high demand. I think every team has a very serviceable shortstop. Of course, point could be the DH. There's some teams that could use work, or maybe a more utility position, third base or something. Or not that that's a utility position. Just saying like he could be versatile in how he's used. But yeah, I think there's a lot of saturation at shortstop, so that's probably why he dropped. If he was a more needed position, I should say, by teams, probably would have easily gone second round somewhere, I would guess. But yeah, that's a great pick by Vancouver. I think they got a steal there. And it's kind of the opposite of what we saw with Baratheon and Justin, where the teams needed them and they wanted to secure. So they picked them there. Here, I think teams would have loved to have Boomerang Goblin. He just didn't really fit their positional needs. So that's why he dropped. Not because if it was purely on just potential activity, I think he would have been a little higher. So yeah, that sounds like I'm kind of contradicting what I said, that activity is all that matters. Activity is like 9/10 of the equation, and then 1/10 is positional need. But you can always just pay for a position switch or something. So yeah, activity, I think 9/10 is a good ratio. So then moving on to pick 15, we have Death Valley picking up Logan Cox at catcher. The username is Cox J328, I think, or something like that. I had talked to him to make sure before the draft, to make sure he got his player approved and everything. Ask him some questions about getting drafted. Seemed like I think he may be the steal of the draft. Super I know he plays OTP because I saw it in Discord, which is always helpful. He plays baseball in real life, which shows just kind of a passion, I think, for the game. Like, obviously baseball is in his interest, so he'll probably want to stick around. And just gave for the Voyagers at least, gave really complete answers and everything. He was one guy we were hoping would drop to us, but we found it pretty unlikely because we knew we needed to take, you'll soon see, we knew we needed to take a closer in the third round, and there was no way Cox was going to drop to 22nd. I think Cox, both Fruit Bat and Cox are new creates, so of course you don't fully know what their activity is going to be, but I think Cox could have gone 13. Is where I would have placed him if I had the 13th pick instead of Fruit Bat. And again, like, this isn't it's not a dig at Fruit Bat or Cox either way. That's just what I would have done. Both seem like they'll be really active. I just had really quality answers from Cox and Fruit Bat. Well, now we know, like, he's super active in the Discord, and that's awesome. Generally, if you create like 30 minutes before the draft, there's a lot of uncertainties, because you could create and then just never show up for anything. But I think, so probably would have switched 13, 15, but I think both were really great picks, and I think both will pan out and be really huge steals. Okay, so then 16, moving on to the New York Voyagers. So this is, we were supposed to pick 16, 17, but then we traded our 17th pick in that three-way trade. So we got, who did we get? Rodney Fletcher. Sorry, had a little bit of a brain lapse. We got Rodney Fletcher, closer, who is Jaskins recreate. Jaskins was a third baseman, I believe, on his first player. Lost a little bit of interest in the league. Now he's back. Wanted to join another sim league, and he's a really big fan of I don't know if he's a big fan of baseball, but I know he loves OOTP. So that's really great that he's back. We needed a closer, and he was really high on our list. He was second, I think, behind Bovo, who we knew we weren't getting. So we're really happy we got him here. I think it's a really solid pick. I think he easily could have gone second round, where ATR was, or where Tindamul was, Pete Rose and Alvin Enax. But yeah, I'm happy he dropped to us. He's really, at least from what I've heard, really thrives in an active locker room, which we have. So, yeah, I'm just expecting great things out of him. And that was actually, we'll see it a little later, but that was actually the last pick we made in the draft. So we're really happy with the two guys we got, and honestly, can't stress that enough. Yeah, we think we drafted well. But of course, everybody does the day after the draft. So then moving on, the next two picks are Vancouver, who picked with the number 17 pick, Kazuya Miyuki, catcher. This is, the user behind Kazuya is Confusion. And maybe some people, Confusion is in other sim leagues, so maybe some people were expecting him to go above Cox and Bolitnikov, but I think his activity historically has been hasn't been bad. I think it's just been not hyperactive. So I think Aviators and Death Valley were right to swing for the fences and hope for like max potential guys. But I think Confusion is going to be a really solid option for Vancouver. And a good guy when I talked to him. Really, really enjoyed talking to him. So, yeah, I think that's a good pick. And then number 18, Vancouver picks Camilla Sawashiro, first baseman, who is Angels Otani. So, to give a bit of backstory, this is actually Angel Otani's second player. Angels created before the S2 draft, and was actually the second round pick of the New York Voyagers. A couple days later, retired because they wanted a new character, weren't happy with their build or whatever, and then went to the Vandals. So that left a little bit of a bitter taste in our mouths, but really enjoyed being on the Vandals, and that's a great pick for the Vandals there because, while I think Camilla has talked about retiring and possibly making another new player, so I think that scared a lot of GMs off, and then also just kind of what happened with New York. It's a little scary to take a chance on a player if that's their history. So if Vancouver didn't take Camilla here, they definitely wouldn't have gotten Angels, because their next pick wasn't until the 5th round. So I think that's a really great pick. And Camilla is active, so that's going to be really great value for the 3rd round. I think that if the Vandals maybe had a 4th round pick, they probably could have gotten Camilla there. Probably at like 21, they could have gotten Camilla still. Okay, so moving on to the 4th round, we have Aviators picking number 19, Khalil Callahan, closer. This is, to the best of my knowledge, lefty on lefty crime. New user, who I think there was actually a pretty good pool of closers this year. I'm excited about lefty. I think has a good activity potential. And Aviators are really it's interesting. They're showing up like every aspect of their game. And they desperately need a closer and bullpen, so that's a good pick. But they're showing up every aspect of their game. 1st round, they take a starting pitcher. 2nd round, they take a catcher, and now third round they're taking a closer. So yeah, good pick there. Nothing too interesting to say about it, but good pick. So then at number 20 you have Death Valley, who take somebody who is, I think, going to be great. Was watching the draft, was in the Discord wanting to get drafted. Reds fan 12C, I think, is the username. The player name is Sam Chung, second baseman. Second base, another really kind of similar to Boomerang Goblin, another really saturated position. So that's that 1/10 of the equation. If they were a closer, starting pitcher, something like that, probably would have seen them go in late second to early to mid third. Yeah, I think early to mid third is probably a better estimate. But yeah, that's a good pick by Death Valley. Hopefully it pans out for them. Yeah. And then 21st pick made by Death Valley was Han Hergel 4, closer. I believe the user for that is NY Rangers 2227, I think. And I think he's inactive. I think entirely inactive, if I remember correctly. But, Death Valley, one of those teams, Aviators 2, although I'm about to get proven wrong, who can take all the help they get, even if it's inactive, fill the roster, and just have some assets. I think that's a good pick. So 22nd overall, it's New York Voyagers. We actually passed on this pick. If Chung had dropped, we would have taken him. But we had really no need for what was left. There was an inactive closer and inactive catchers and an inactive third base. All of those positions we have full. We already signed an inactive backup catcher who's at higher TPE than all the ones that were available. So we just didn't feel the need to fill a roster spot and put more of our cap space into that. So we passed. But there were, we were trying to trade this to the Sloths, but and rightfully so for Osu. It didn't make sense to trade another pick. So even for a future draft, so there were some talks of maybe sending over a contract we don't want. But then I was like, well, we just in the off season went through cutting all the people we didn't want. So so nothing came of that. So we passed. So then 23rd, Crabs took Keeks Marone, center fielder, and the user is Keeks Marone. This is an interesting one because, excuse me for the yawn, but I'm pretty sure Keeks has logged on recently, but I don't think he's posted anything for a very long time. So that's a fine pick by the Crabs. That's taking an asset, not only for themselves, but out of the hands of other teams. And if Keeks comes back, that's a steal because they desperately need outfield. Or I don't know if I should say desperately. For S3, they're probably okay, but for the future, they need outfield. And then we have Sloths at round 4, 24, taking Grey Goose McGillicuddy. That's the user's Ramikis. He was actually the New York's only waiver pick of S2. Ramikis is going through a lot of hard real life stuff right now, so I know he hasn't been active in the PBE, which is fine. Obviously, that's pretty much my motto. Real life should always take precedent over this, and don't apologize to me ever about not having time for the league. That's totally acceptable. So yeah, inactive closer for the Sloths. If they can get Ramikis back, great. That would be great for the league. If not, they get some bullpen depth, and pitching is what the Sloths lack the most. So I think that's a necessary pick. Round 5, we start with the Aviators passing. Sloths picking up inactive catcher Ben O'Leary, who is... Wait. Nobody took... I don't... Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, he's inactive. Nothing too much to say about that. They needed a catcher, so he'll fill their catcher slot. Then 2 passes by Death Valley and New York. And then Vancouver's going to pass later, but Providence basically takes the last 2 people in the draft. Badr Aljuni, who I forget what position he plays. Let me look really quick. Somebody didn't list it. Looking at you, Rabid. Badr, he's center fielder. Okay. I think he's at OKTP. I think he's at 140 or something. So I don't know what's up with that, but the Crabs wanted assets, and then they took inactive third baseman Nico Evans, who the user's Tyler, from the VHL, so they might be able to get him back. But yeah, just taking assets at that point. Interestingly, James Bonfire, retired catcher, the user Speculadora, wasn't taken, I don't think, which makes sense. They'd only get him for S3. I think he's at higher TPE than O'Leary, maybe. But again, you'd only get to use him for S3. So that's the draft. A couple things to say about it that are not, specific player related. We were worried that our draft was going to be small, and compared to last season, which was a Reddit draft and had, let me look really quick, how many people overall? We had 8 rounds, and how many people picked? 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 44 picks. 44 actual people taken, which is really big. But I think people were expecting... So compared to that, it's small, but considering we only made 1 Reddit post and then just advertised on other sites, other SimLeak sites, this is really fantastic. And then also, as I was talking to other GMs, we had really solid picks, like quality people that I think are going to bring some really great activity through the first, let me look, I don't want to get it wrong. Let me look at the drafts. I think 3.5 rounds. Let me look to confirm that, but let's see. No, through the first 4 and a third rounds, I would say, active people who I think are going to be active in at least some sense, which is that's 20 new people who are going to bring some activity to the league, which is really great. And I know the recruitment team, who's Yurt, and I'm a part of that as well, and SLM helps out. We're going to be doing making it so that we have more Reddit posts to do each season, because what happens is, you can't, because we have a draft roughly every 5 weeks or something, so we can't just be posting on these same Reddits over and over for every draft. So what we'll do is we'll have a strategy of just asking like a third of the Reddits for 1 year, second third for the second year, and so on. Or season, I should say, not year. But yeah, really a lot of quality in this draft. So I'm thinking this is going to be, well, it was, maybe a little smaller in absolute numbers, in terms of actual percentage of people who stay active. I think it's going to be phenomenal. So what else? Oh yeah, I'll talk about kind of just, I've got about 10 minutes left in this podcast. So I'll go on and talk about my overall impressions of how each team did. And before I say that, or before I get into them, I will say that it's impossible. This is the day after the draft also, so it's impossible to know how a lot of these prospects are going to pan out. Some of them might lose interest. Some of them might be way better than anybody thought they would be. So this is kind of just shooting in the dark, but I'll give my overall impression. I think people did a really good job for the most part. Aviators, I think, got 4 really solid players. They filled out many of the positions they need. They wouldn't have gotten Richie if they didn't take him first overall, but I think there might have been, and he's solid. He's going to develop into a really solid player. I think they maybe could have swung for the fences a little bit more. But I still think that's a really solid pick. Virgil Fox is a fantastic pick at 7. That's exactly where he should have gone, maybe 6. But I don't think he wanted to go to the Sloths. And then the Sloths wouldn't have gotten Christie. They got Eric Bolitnikov, who looks like is going to be an absolute stud. And they got Khalil Callahan, who also seems like he'll be a really solid addition to the bullpen. I don't think I'm going to do like actual grades because that's just so like, what's my grading system? I don't know. I'm just talking on a podcast. I guess, well, I can try something. I would give it like, out of 5 stars, probably a 4 or 4.5. I think they did a really great job with that. And I think they got 4 new great additions to their locker room and to their team. Moving on to I'm probably going to make my ratings really high. So, and it's out of 5 stars. So that was a good rating. And I'm probably going to make them all really high because A, don't want anybody to hate me, and B, I honestly think people did a great job. So we're moving on to the Crabs, who got Beanie second, Pete Rose and Alvin Enox in round 2, and then in round 4 got Keeks Marone. I think, well, Beanie was an essential pick, so I mean, obviously that's a good pick. If they didn't take him, they would have gotten reamed in a trade probably. And they desperately needed bullpen, so I think that was good to pick up 2 guys in the second round. I think they easily could have gone another direction. Because even without a bullpen, sometimes pure activity might be better because we have a big free agency year coming up. So, yeah, I think they could have shored up their bullpen in other ways and maybe just taken the more pure active people. But I still think those are really solid picks, so I'd probably give it like a 3.754 out of 5. And that's, yeah, and I think they did a good job for the most part. And more importantly, they took who they wanted to take. So if it pans out for them, fantastic. Then we're moving on to Vancouver, who took Bovo third, and then Boomerang Goblin 14th, Kazuya Miyuki 17th, and Camila Sawashiro 18th. I think Bovo, even at 3, I said it before, is kind of a steal. Bovo's going to be an absolute force in this league. Has shown fantastic activity. People really like Bovo, and his players is great. On top of that, Boomerang Goblin in the 3rd round, I think will be a steal. One of those situations where other teams didn't need him. That's why he didn't get taken. Yeah, taken. But I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong. And prove my point that pure activity is often better than positional need. Which I think is a trap that a lot of people fall into. Saying, oh, well, I don't need that position. But yeah, that's fair, but that doesn't mean they don't have more value. Then Vancouver, Kazuya Miyuki, I think Confusion is going to be at least a decent pickup. Nothing that wows me really there. I think they could have taken Chung. I think that would have really made their draft way better. But they don't have a gap really anywhere on their team. So, and then Camila Sawashiro is is a steal at 18. Yeah, just a great activity. I know a lot of GMs, ourselves included, were really wary of picking Sawashiro, and probably wouldn't have anyway, but that's still a great pick. That's going to be a really great pick for Vancouver. So yeah, I would give Vancouver I don't know. I'm not wowed by... Yeah, I think Chung was a missed opportunity, so I would say probably a similar to the Crabs, but for a different reason. Crabs, I feel like they could have, if gone a direction of more pure activity. Vancouver, I have to give Vancouver like a 4. Because Camilla's going to be a steal, Boomerang Goblin I feel like it's going to be a steal, Bovo is a god in the bullpen. So yeah, like a 4. But I guess I only have, because I think like actual drafting, in like terms of the players they got, probably a 4.5, maybe even a 4.75. But in terms of like drafting, like their round 3, I think they could have done different things. But that being said, they wouldn't have gone Sawashiro if they didn't go round 3. So yeah, I'd say, so I don't even know if I can make a distinction there. Probably 4 and 4, between a 4 and 4.5 is what I would give them. Maybe better. Who's next? Sloths. I think Osu did really well with what she had. She had no picks in the second and third round, and that's really difficult. So she basically got 2 picks in the first round and then inactives. So that being said, I think T-Bone at number 4 is a great pick. That's going to pay dividends for the Sloths, and I think it's a really great pick by San Antonio. Christie at 6, again, as I mentioned before, was a pick she needed to make. Osu needed to make because otherwise she wouldn't have gotten Christie. But at 6, Christie is, I think, a little bit of a reach because other teams might not have been as inclined to take Christie. So it's kind of a similar situation, I think. And then they got inactive. So I think in terms of pure players, probably like in the upper 3s somewhere, and then I think they could have. I mean, Osu did what she had to do, but I think Christie at 6 is a little bit of a reach, so probably about the same for the draft. But Osu is going to be and Toivo. I keep not saying Toivo. Toivo is a Sloths Jam also. Going to be an absolute force in this league. They have the determination to really see everything through. So, in Death Valley. So Andy had, I think, pretty damn good draft, actually. I would say maybe the best draft out of anybody. Meiji Yasu at 5 is a steal in and of itself, I think. That's going to be one of the premier outfielders in the future. Great pick. The only one I'm a little shaky on, and I'll get to the others after, obviously, is Justin at 9. I think Death Valley could have taken... I think Death Valley's probably extremely happy with who they got it in the third round, but I think Justin didn't need to be taken at 9. Probably still would have been there for them in the third round. And then their third round pick, Logan Cox, great pick. I think that's going to be just another really fantastic pick. They don't know what's going on with their current catcher. Logan's probably going to earn it at a high rate, replace that catcher within a season. And then round 4, I think Sam Chung was a great pick. I have nothing much more to say on that I haven't said already, and I think Han Hergel inactive closer, but they need bullpen, to my knowledge. They don't need bullpen. So I don't know why they... Yeah, I'm not really a fan of that. That's just taking up cap space, but if they sign him. But I think Death Valley had a really good draft. I would put them... Yeah, whatever the highest is, I give to them. And they broke 2-season streak of poor drafting. So, props to Andy and Mav. And then moving on to whoever had and then moving on to New York, I guess. So I think our draft went. I think I'm really happy with the 2 picks we got. Thing is, we had only 2 picks. So, in terms of like additions, like just shoring up our team. Maybe since we only got 2, that would hurt our rating a little bit, but I'm really happy with the 2 that we got, and I think that they're going to be great. Either they already are great additions to our locker room, and I think more than that, are really going to shore up some of our gaps, which will help us compete in S3, and then I think New York's big year. We'll have to see how extensions go and everything. I think New York is going to have a huge year S4, S5, because we've cultivated some really great activity and yada yada yada. I won't talk about that very much because the hour is up. Thank you for joining me on this special draft podcast. I'll be smiling both when you listen to it, because I really appreciate it, and also when my bank gets updated with an extra $4 million. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. I'm trying to do these every week now. I've actually really enjoyed just it helps me process the league news, and I know for a lot of new guys and even the Sim League veterans, if you're not a GM or something like that, it can be really hard to keep up with what's going on in the league and who's who and who's doing well, and stuff like that. So I hope this is helpful. And until next time, thanks for listening.